Well, man, I know you're like me and you're looking for other guys that are trying to heed the high call in their life, that are trying to improve themselves. And sometimes that can be a challenge. It can be a challenge just to find time to meet with other men. And that's why I want to tell you about the Wolf and Iron community. This is a Facebook group. It's a closed group that you can join where like-minded men are having some great conversations. If you're looking for some encouragement, if you've got questions about life as a man, you want to be a part of this group. Now, you can request membership by going to wolfandiron.com/the group. That'll take you over to our Facebook page. You'll be prompted with a couple of questions. Make sure you answer those because not everybody gets in. We're working really hard to keep out the riffraff, and we want to make sure that this group remains of the highest caliber. Once again, that's wolfandiron.com/the group. The second thing I want to tell you guys about is the Wolf and Iron store. We actually put some stickers out there. So there's a sticker pack you can actually go out there and get now. So I know you guys have been wanting to support Wolf and Iron in various ways. Some of you have requested t-shirts. Some of you have requested prints. A lot of you guys have requested stickers. So we've got a Wolf and Iron sticker pack out there that you can pick up. It's got 4 stickers in it and 2 man cards. It's a great way to share some of this stuff with Wolf and Iron. Just slap one on anything and everything and help spread the word. And you can get to the store by going to store.wolfandiron.com. Okay, on with the show.
Duty, honor, country dictate what you ought to be, what you can be, what you will be.
The destiny of man is not measured by material computations. When great forces are on the move in the world, we learn we're spirits, not animals.
Now we are the masters of our fate.
Howdy, gents. Welcome back to another episode of the Wolf and Iron podcast. I'm your host, Mike Yarbrough, founder and curator of wolfandiron.com, and I'm glad you're here. I mentioned in a podcast last year that there were a couple of different things that I wanted us to support, and I really wanted to call attention to for us men to be serious about and have on our radar and know how we can support. One of those things is veterans support, so helping our veterans out. So there's a previous podcast about the Independence Fund. You guys can go listen to that. But the other thing was human trafficking, sex trafficking, and how do we really make an impact and recognize that this battle is good battle and it is on our doorsteps. It's one of those things that just exists in the shadows, and that makes it difficult for us to realize just how close to home this kind of thing is. Men, I want you to understand, girls in your community are either at risk of being abducted and pulled into basically sex slavery, or there's a chance that this kind of thing is already taking place all around you and you're not even aware of it. Now, here in Charlotte, we've got some guys called the Justice Ministry, and Mark Blackwell heads this thing up. And I asked Mark to be on this podcast because I really wanted to talk about this. I wanted to get some insight into something that we'd probably rather not think about. And if you're a father of a daughter, well, first of all, let me just tell you, I feel for you because this podcast is going to hit you hard. But this episode's also going to give you some information that you need to make sure your daughter doesn't end up in the situations that it's just so tragic for some of these girls. But for everybody, this is going to give us some information that's really going to help us situate our mind around the sex trafficking industry. So guys, this is a serious one, and I want you to take it seriously. You can find out more about Justice Ministries and really how to get involved in this kind of effort by going over to wolfandiron.com/justice. That's going to give you all the links, the show notes here as well, but all the links to help out the Justice Ministry, contribute there in some way. And if you're local, I just want to say up front, just in case you don't listen to all the way to the end of the episode, but they've got a cool thing going on. If you're a handy guy, if you know how to do some woodworking, some timber framing type of stuff, they're actually working on building these small, what they call tiny houses, just these safe houses. And from what it sounds like, it's something that a couple of guys could put together maybe in a weekend or something along those lines. But they've got plans for these things. But I think that'd be a great project for you to get your hands on something that's a very tangible and practical way to help out. But without further ado, here's Mark Blackwell of Justice Ministries. Mr. Mark Blackwell from Justice Ministries, thank you so much for being on the Wolf and Iron podcast.
Glad to be here, Mike. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, man. I reached out to one of your guys probably about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, had lunch with him. I wish I could remember his name. I don't. I meant to go look at my emails before I started this podcast. But we just had a great conversation about what you guys are doing. And just for the people who are listening in that may not be familiar with Justice Ministries, you guys are fairly local to me. I'm in Charlotte. You guys are based in Charlotte, is that right? Or close by?
That's correct.
Yeah. And
we serve primarily the Carolinas, but we're mainly based here in Charlotte.
Okay. And I know you guys put on different events. I've been to a couple of different 5K runs that you guys have done, and we see you guys popping up in the media in different places around here. So I really wanted to reach out to you guys, and I thought you'd be a great person to speak to about this very serious issue of human trafficking. And like I said to you before we got started, for the guys that are listening to this, I want you guys to understand that this is one of the big issues that I want us to tackle every year. So every year we're going to have someone that's going to be talking about human trafficking, sex trafficking. We're also going to be tackling the issues of supporting our veterans and making sure that we're on the right page with these things, but also making sure that we realize that these are our responsibilities, that this isn't just some sort of nebulous thing that it just exists in society and we're kind of separate from it. I want you to understand that men, and particularly the men who feel this high call in their lives to make the world a better place, that you guys are front and center at fighting this battle. And I want you guys to have the tools to know how to do that. And I want you guys to know who's in the fight with you. And so that's why I got Mark on here. So Mark, just kick us off here. Tell us a little bit about Justice Ministries and how you guys got started, with it.
Sure. Yeah. So in 2010, I was actually in my last semester in college, and a group of friends of mine, we went down to Atlanta for the Passion Conference. You may be familiar with it. It's a big event led by Louis Giglio, and they bring in a lot of big-name artists and big-name speakers, John Piper, Francis Chan, and folks like that. And they covered a lot of social injustice issues that were going on worldwide, and one of which was the epidemic with human trafficking. So it was, 2010. I had heard of the term, but I think that was my first real introduction to the issue. And they did a great job just kind of explaining it internationally, and even touched on to the fact that it was happening in the U.S. And at that conference, I just felt like God was calling me to serve this population of people, and specifically in my country and even in my hometown. Just kind of as a Christian and as a man, when I learned that it was most likely happening in Charlotte, and that it was happening to girls. The average age of entry into forced prostitution for a female in the U.S. is 13 years old. Wow. And again, just as a believer and as a red-blooded American man, how do you just sit on that? And I just it just put a passion and a fire in me that didn't go away. And so I felt the Lord called me to serve in this area. I researched the issue a lot. I tried to find any and every group I could find with trafficking in the title, and went to any training I could find. And basically after meeting with law enforcement and other agencies and community members, I found that there was just such a minimal level of activity in terms of removing people that were currently in it, that we just saw a void there and decided to start an organization to focus on removing individuals that were caught up in it and helping them get to safety.
So how does that, I'm just thinking about this kind of starting this organization, like, starting any kind of business is difficult. Starting a not-for-profit's harder usually. And then this kind of thing, like, how do you guys know where to start? I mean, was it those connections that you made with the people who are already kind of in this field? Or, how did you even know where to begin with this kind of thing?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it was really funny how far I got with just Googling and just going and checking things out. I definitely encourage guys, don't go play investigator. We need to leave the investigations up to the police and not do that kind of thing. But, I mean, honestly, most of mine was very simple. I was just Googling activity in the area, and I made a Google map of some cross-references of activity that seemed to verify each other. I turned some of that into law enforcement. I met with other similar social agencies to see what they were offering, and then basically found that there was almost nobody specializing in the emergent need. So, we're having prevention and stuff, and that's great, but what are we doing about the young lady that's in trafficking situation tonight? And even if we did identify her, where are we going to take her? Where does she go? Yeah. And there was just a lacking there. So we decided to focus on raising some money to be able to fund some emergency housing for those individuals. And it took a while, just to grow those relationships with law enforcement. Building trust is everything, in any kind of business or network. But by 2012, we had launched a hotline, and even a few years later, we were getting calls not only from girls directly that were in their situation, but also some from law enforcement referrals. And then that trend with law enforcement continued to grow. By 2015, the majority of our calls were coming from law enforcement referrals that they had identified a girl, and then they were calling us to help with the emergent care side of things.
Yeah. Man, so, okay, I don't want to make light of this, but I had a picture that came to mind when you said that, you're kind of sitting in front of the computer, I'm trying to figure out, where these activities and things are taking place. You're kind of like the guy in the chair. Have you seen the latest Spider-Man movie?
I think so. Yeah,
Okay.
there's so many, it's hard to keep up with which is which.
I know. All right, so
Yeah.
this is going to be a little bit of spoilers here, but his friend basically decides to be the guy in the chair, and so while Spider-Man's out doing his thing, he's kind of like Alfred is now for Batman, but he's basically the guy in the chair that's telling him, hey, here's where you go, here's what you do. Watch your back. You got thugs coming around, with the corner, whatever the case is. But that's kind of what I think about is like, you actually have, the ability, or you found the ability to, with what you had, you didn't necessarily have the experience of going out, kicking butt, taking names, locking guys up, whatever, the kind of vigilante type of thing that we may envision. But you did have the ability to just work with what you got, start with what you had, and then make a difference, which is just awesome, by the way.
Yeah, and it was truly by the grace of God that things worked out. I mean, I was no, expert researcher. The Lord just kind of made a path and said, "There it is." So I was actually kind of fascinated by the even the limited research I had done that actually turned into things. So here was another big realization we came across is that the human trafficking population isn't a population that is self-identifying and saying, hey, here we are, I'm a trafficking victim, come help me.
Right.
So they wouldn't even identify themselves as a trafficking victim for the most part. So we also saw a need to be accessible. We can put all the awareness out there. We can simply give it to law enforcement. But what about the young ladies that they just need a place to call, Because with fair reason, there's many girls that are afraid to turn themselves in or anything like that. So we also felt the need to start a hotline. And we had a really interesting connection through, again, the Lord opened this door with the strip clubs in the area. One of the guys, or the guy that owns like 90% of the clubs in the Charlotte area, there was a volunteer of ours who was a pastor's wife who ended up getting a relationship going with him, and he ended up giving us access to go into any of the clubs that we wanted to.
Wow.
On a schedule and bring goodie bags or care packages. And it was just God opened that door. Yeah. So really since, I don't know how long we've been doing it now, but since at least 2011, maybe earlier, we've been every month sending a team of ladies to go inside and a few guys to hang out and pray and just be kind of moral support. And we bring care packages into a variety of strip clubs every month and just letting them know, hey, we care. We see you. We love you and want you to know if you need anything or you need somebody to talk to, here's a number you can call. We're here. And really a kind of an interesting habit to get into. I mean, literally for the past 6-7 years, I've been going to a strip club every month. But, I'm sure, have a church member pass say, that's Mark's truck. What in the world?
Yeah, no, it's a good way to get people to sign up. Yeah, that's hey guys, want to go to strip clubs? Yeah. Yeah,
it's kind of different. But but that turned into basically our opportunity to kind of keep our hand on the pulse of the sex industry in Charlotte. And though certainly not every girl working at a club is necessarily a victim, but many of them, and I would argue most of them, are in very difficult situations, and it's not people's first choice as a career.
Sure.
So we're getting the word out saying, hey, if you need help or if you know someone that needs help, or if you just need to talk, here's a number. And really even through that effort, a lot of kind of word of mouth happened, and we were actually getting girls that were being trafficked in sketchy hotels in the back corners of Charlotte calling us saying, my cousin or my friend said you can maybe help. And that's really how it started, with the organic calls.
Yeah.
And that was in 2012. And over time that kind of picked up. We had 10 calls the first year in 2012. We had 30 in 2013. By 2014, we had 100 calls. So it was just this snowball effect. And in transitioning from 2014 into 2015, that's really when the law enforcement calls started picking up, and they started going, oh, that's a unique service. We could take advantage of that. And then from then we've kind of transitioned more into primarily law enforcement referrals. But we do occasionally, we still will get what I call organic calls when a young lady finds us herself or do a referral and they reach out, and we're still happy to help that. We try to engage law enforcement partners whenever we can, just because it's safer. But there are occasions where it's not necessarily needed. It's just we're simply a taxi service at that point, and we're just helping her leave. But yeah, it's our process is reach out, relocate, rise up. We see it's a demographic we have to reach out to. Normally, they need a physical removal from their situation to get away from that and into a safe place. And then Rise Up basically just stands for our transitional care model. And that could be helping refer them to a long-term housing program, in the reconnecting when they finish up there, or that could be helping them identify, maybe they're ready to just move on with life as is, and we just help them identify a counselor and an apartment that they could rent and help them, just kind of coach them along as they try to get back on their feet. So it varies from client to client.
Well, I'll tell you, this conversation is so good because, for one thing, I'll say God's really using you and you're really the right guy for the job, just listening to you, because the whole situation, sex trafficking, human trafficking, for me, and I think for most guys, and probably for you as well, it just pisses me off so much, right?
Yeah.
I have so much anger and hatred to the people who are doing these things that my first response would be, whose ass can I kick, right? I mean, that's the first thing. Sure. That's the first place I go, right? But when I hear your approach, it's so much compassion there for the ladies that are experiencing this. And really, I love that, I think really just comes from Christ that says, we're going to love you no matter what you've been through. We want to help you, out of this, and then leave the tail kicking and stuff up to the authorities. But I just think that'd be such a difficult place to be in. Even with people who are counseling other people, it's a challenge to kind of separate, the difficulties that have happened to them and just kind of focus on bettering them and not necessarily trying to, think about, oh, I can't believe this happened. This was terrible. I want to make sure so-and-so gets locked up. How do you deal with that on a kind of a day-to-day or weekly basis and just stay compassionate and not get just taken over by just the hatred towards the perpetrators?
Sure. Yeah. I think the scariest version is, sometimes we see in the clients and also in the traffickers, if we're honest with ourselves, we can see ourselves,
Yeah.
And I think that's a hard place to be. And because, when we really see that, we're so broken and we deserve what they deserve, we're no better, then it can help me constantly. That's a constant reminder the Lord can kind of help it put it in perspective. And if not for the sacrifice of Jesus, I could be that guy.
Yeah.
And I think that's one, thing to help kind of simplify what we're dealing with. But I totally get, like, I have a lot of guy volunteers that approach us and I can appreciate, and I've been there. I've been the, hey, let's just get our shotguns and let's go handle this. I've felt that exact need. In fact, I think it took a while with law enforcement, because I think my first interactions with law enforcement, I think that's what they thought I was trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, look, guys, I'm not trying to go be a vigilante. I'm just trying to help see progress here.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, one of the things that hit me early, was when I learned about trafficking, learned that it was possibly a 13 or 14 or 15-year-old, and I thought, man, what if that was like my little cousin? Like, what would I not do to go get her back? And then it hit me. It's like, well, if I would do that for her, and we're supposed to love our neighbor as ourselves, shouldn't I be doing this for any girl that's out there and with that same intensity? I think that. So I've been on both sides where I've been fired up. I just want to. You're ready to mix it up, but also the Lord has kind of said, leave that to me. And he's just put the tools and opportunities in my hand for the aftercare type need. I mean, it's great to go stop something from happening. And I think so much of the time there is a time and a place where it does take action, and we are called upon as men we're not called to just sit by. We're called to be leaders and engage. But for the most part, in my experience, the act of serving people with compassion for long term, it actually can be a lot more work.
Yeah, sure.
We can put up all the traffickers, but if all these girls that have been affected and traumatized, and it's boys too, there's a long-term need after that to helping them get back on their feet. In fact, what I really love about your approach with really focusing on trafficking and supporting vets is, I mean, it's a very different population, but sometimes they both may have PTSD. They're both dealing with severe trauma, and they need people that can be patient and understand that and are willing to go the distance with things that may not be normal or may even be difficult, to address.
Sure.
But yeah, no, how do I balance the emotional side or the anger side? It's been a process, and I've just really got to follow back to, you know what, I'm not running the show. The Lord's running the show, and I'm here to be a servant. So wherever the Lord would lead today, that's the job I need to focus on. And He's been gracious to give me tasks that, though sometimes they're really challenging and difficult, as we know, the Lord doesn't put anything on you that He can't carry you through. So I just lean on Him as we try to serve these people the best we can.
Yeah. No, that's a great answer. Oh, man. Give us an idea of just the scale and the seriousness of where we are in today's day and age with human trafficking, particularly in the U.S., because I think a lot of times we hear about it, we know it exists, but we really just don't understand the magnitude of it. Tell us a little bit about what that looks like.
Sure. Yeah. It's, I really laugh when I go to some places and they're like, oh, we don't have that here. Like, oh, yeah, well, you haven't been looking, because in all fairness, it's very possible you could go to a town or a county even, and they have no crime reports of human trafficking. Yeah, that's totally legit in terms of the statistical analysis. But that doesn't mean it's not happening. I mean, this is something that, again, it's happening in the shadows. It's happening in secret locations or kind of under the radar. And it's also something where the victim themselves isn't necessarily going to admit to what happened.
Sure.
Many times, the abusers and traffickers have manipulated and done so many controlling techniques. They even if it went to court, they're more scared of their trafficker than they are spending time in jail or that judge. So they may be the ones to botch the hearing. So it's sometimes it is because it's just such a difficult population to help. And one of the things I've seen even with us is why it's so important for us not to approach a client in a clinical fashion. Like you're just a checkbox. We have to see you as a person, and they have to believe that that's how we truly see them. Otherwise, why would they trust us
right.
To get help? Because they think with so much of the government side, they're just like, hey, I'm not a priority to you. Once you get your guy, I'm out in the cold,
Right.
But yeah, to answer your question, the magnitude of it, so often we've seen the reports of major sporting events, Super Bowl, these kind of things, and there are certainly upticks. With anytime large populations of men are brought to an area, you're going to see an uptick in this kind of activity. But I really do think you could pretty much find it around any major city in the country, and you're going to find it in some rural sections as well. It's basically just a combination of vulnerability from the victims and sometimes desperation or lack of other opportunities from the traffickers, or just they figured out how to do this. I mean, there are actually sites out there that teach people how to pimp. I mean, it's disgusting. I'm not for, really, I don't know, the whole censoring of the internet conversation, I have different opinions on it. It's like, maybe there are some things we just need to give them viruses.
Right.
Let's just shut them down. Maybe not the government control it, but let's get rid of some of that, fight back. But yeah, no, I think it's definitely a bigger problem than people think it is. And oftentimes people brush it off because it's not in their face all the time. It's something you could pass every day on your way to work. And if you weren't really looking, you wouldn't notice it.
So here in a little bit later in the conversation, I want to get into kind of how girls get brought up in this, or how kids just get, taken into this in general. But I want to talk about what do you think is contributing to this as a society? I mean, obviously, we're moving away from God, or I guess I should say, as a society in America, particularly, we've moved away from really Christian beliefs, a God-centric, church-centric kind of mindset, and that obviously is going to influence our morality. Give us some ideas on what, though, that you're seeing that you think really contributes to the growth of this and just kind of the explosion of this, at least in terms of the American within our borders.
Okay. So, yeah, if we focus here, mainly in the States and that activity, we have a few things at play. Obviously, we've all been told prostitution is the oldest industry,
Yep.
And I think part of it is a cultural wake-up call that we call it an oldest industry as if, these are a bunch of women that choose to be prostitutes. And where that exists, and there are women that do choose it, in my experience, that is not the norm. And many of them, though it wasn't an obvious thing, were being controlled by another person and kind of at least influenced to do this, if not being forced. And then for the others that maybe are working on their own, two things are happening. One, they're in a desperate situation, probably trying to feed a child or take care of a sickly family member. And then even if they are out there on their own, the pimps are looking, and they're looking to recruit. And quickly, many of those women do fall under pimp control and end up in that same situation. So I think we have to kind of rethink prostitution as if it's a women's problem. And there, some women are like that. Not really. And normally there's a lot of variables that lead someone to that. So we know that it has been around. Human trafficking isn't a new thing since 2008. We just started putting a title on it,
Yeah.
and started digging in a little more. The other thing that's happening is we've become such a virtual society. Also since 2008, we really got into the smartphone world, if you will,
yep.
where everyone has a screen in front of them. We all have the internet literally on our hip. And, there was a time that, to even access pornography, a man had to take a lot of steps, go down to a store, buy a magazine or a DVD and show himself, or if a man was seeking out a woman to be with, he had to go somewhere, connect, risk exposing himself to really go there. We're now through the internet. We have quicker access to things like pornography or in-calls, out-calls, where a man can do it a lot more discreetly all through an app or all through, some other payment plan. Because we find that the majority of trafficking is taking place in hotels. So for every one girl you may think you see on the street corner, there's probably 4 or 5 more in a hotel somewhere being worked. So it's hidden, and it's a lot easier to access it. There was a time a man had to make a lot of bad decisions to get to that point. Now he's just a couple of clicks away, and he's there. So that is one element of it. The other thing that's going on in terms of risk of youth and young people is their access to social media, internet, and really the sexualization of young women in our culture. You know what I'm talking about. You've seen it on TV and so much of these things that they try to make a 13-year-old look like a woman, and it's just so weird. But we're normalizing that kind of activity. We have no radar for what's normal in sexual activity. The idea that sex is between a man and a woman in the context of marriage is seen to be some kind of weird, bigoted, foreign idea. It's like, so there's a lot of weird things going on with our idea of sex. So to me, it's not surprising that this is the manifestation of man's thinking, and this is where we get to, things like this.
Yeah. That's absolutely right in line with what I was thinking, and that's some of the things that I kind of preach on. I don't want to call it preaching, but those are the things I definitely speak about on a number of occasions. And because we're in a situation now as a society where we've removed God from schools, we've removed God from a lot of our thought, and therefore what is a human? Well, we're just an animal of some kind. If you take God out of the picture, and there's no mind behind why we're here, it's just we're all part of an accidental kind of scheme. And if that's the case, it's not a big leap to say, well, why don't I just treat other people like animals? I mean, what's the where's the value and where's the intrinsic worth and value in a human being? And those are the kind of things that a lot of us kind of grew up with because we had enough churchy kind of culture still going on, or we were taught these things in Sunday school. But you take that away, and now you've got people who just they don't see people with that inherent worth that they ought to, and then they also don't see the wrong of the path that they're on, to going down, looking at pornography, searching up, women on the internet, sex outside of marriage, and those kinds of things. And these are discussions that I have to have with even guys, that follow Wolf and Iron. There's even disagreements, right, about, is it okay to have sex outside of marriage or not? Those kinds of things. So absolutely, I see these kinds of things taking place and contributing to it. I also, there's confusion as well for us as a culture right now, because we do have, in one sense, we have a very sexualized, we have for many, many years, this is not new, but a very sexualized view of women, right? So every time you look on the internet, Instagram, doesn't matter where you go, there's some hot looking girl on there that's trying to get your attention. And she seems to be just loving your attention. But when the man goes out into the real world, especially at work, right? He's not supposed to flirt with women. He's seen as a perv if he tries to ask a girl out. There's a lot of confusion around, like, how do men and women just interact with each other in this kind of normal kind of setting? You put those two things together, and you've got a lot of frustrated guys that are very confused, that, like you said, are also a few clicks away from getting into some really bad decisions. And, a lot of this does come back to, how do we correct the home? How do we correct men's thinking? And, a lot of this obviously comes from, a number of generations now of fatherlessness, men not showing what it means to be a man. And we have this, where it used to be a separation between, a man could see himself as a man and differentiate himself from, say, a little girl, right? He would see a girl as a girl and as almost like a naive kind of little creature. We've got males growing up into what should be manhood, still thinking as boys, and still thinking about girls as being on this kind of sexualized level. And it's just a lot of perversion. Like I said, it does come from not only just the access to pornography, the pervasiveness of that, but also the fatherlessness, where men aren't being shown, here are the qualities and characteristics of a man. And there's just so much that goes into it. I'm going to get off on a tangent here. I don't want to, but
I totally agree, because I've exactly. Well, a couple things. They call human trafficking modern day slavery, for a reason, because people are essentially being treated as property. And also, to your point, we've seen this too. I've partnered with some agencies that do more outreach to men, that are buying and looking for this stuff, trying to kind of get in front of them and say, dude, what are you doing? And you find, and all of us as men, if we search our hearts and search our own, issues, you can kind of see what's happening. But it's essentially they're looking for a cheap yes, and all men at the end of the day, we want to be respected. We want to be wanted and desired, and so this is the synthetic version of that, So that's what I think oftentimes people are searching. I think many men that are caught up in it, like they understand it's wrong. It's not even truly what they want, but it's a synthetic version of yes, of that natural camaraderie and connection you should have in the context of a marriage, and we all know marriages have issues. I mean, plenty of these guys buying are married men, so that's a whole nother discussion. But yeah, you're exactly right. It all kind of comes crashing together on the subject.
Yep. I got a big question here, and I don't even know if there's a way to gauge this, but it's something that I thought about as I was preparing for this conversation. And that is, if we think about this as a battle or as a war, the big question I have is, are we winning? And is there a way to determine whether or not we're gaining or losing ground on this issue?
That's a great one. So it's interesting. I think there are levels of that. For a long time, I think I thought of this in terms of, we need to build an army, and go fight it. And then now as we've gotten more into it, and, very few of us actually are having opportunities to hit the street and actually interact with the victims and do things. I was talking to one of the consultant type guy I work with, and he said, we talk like we're trying to build an army, but really we're trying to raise money and fund special forces to go extract people.
Right.
And I was like, wow, that's true. I mean, in a way we are. Like, I can't just take a guy that's, really jacked up and wants to bring a shotgun and is ready to kick some teeth in, but has no sense of how to work with a traumatized female. Mm-hmm. Like, I can't really use him, like not legally. I mean, like that could shut us all down.
Sure.
I mean, so it's like, that's not who I really need. You need people that can, with precision, go in, address the need, remove the person at risk, and offer them care, and leaving, any assistance we can to leave the rest to the authorities to put the guy away and be prosecuted at the full extent of the law, because any other version of this is just really going to go bad. So there's that piece of, the people in the field really need to be more specialized in what they're doing. However, that doesn't mean we're not building an army, metaphorically, right. To address this, both with, counter defenses and offenses, and just traditional defense, and it can be as simple as people that are going to sign up to be reading buddies to pour into that child so that they're less vulnerable in their teen years and less susceptible to be trafficked. It can be people raising funds to help fund the bed space and fund the aftercare programs. It can be fathers being fathers and knowing their children's whereabouts. I mean, so in a sense, it's like, it's totally an army. I mean, we need all hands on deck on this. And then we have to just be clear about our post, what our different jobs are and what that can be. I have plenty of people call wanting to do stuff. And really, we're at a place right now where we really have a hard time using volunteers because of the unique emergent nature of our work. But at the end of the day, I tell people, what's your gifting? What's your skill set? I'll find a good use for it in a way it can help us, so everyone can play a part, and it's an issue for everybody. We don't get to check out on this. I've used the saying, so many times people talk about the transatlantic slave trade and say, oh, if I'd been around at that time, I would have done this, that, or the other. And I'm going, well, it looks different, but we are dealing with modern day slavery, and it's in your time in history. So what are you doing about it? We can say, hey, you have an opportunity to hop in right now in some way. It's I don't know if that answers the question, but yeah, I do think, the ultimate question being, are we winning or are we losing?
Sure.
And that's a tough one. Because in a way, I feel like the more I peel back the layers, the more I see of how bad it really is.
Yeah.
And the more I peel it back, it actually looks different than I thought it did. I think most of us go in thinking, hey, there's just going to be some little 13-year-old girl in a cage somewhere that I can help her, I can rescue her and love on her, and she'll be so happy, and we'll give her a Pepsi and some snacks, and it'll all be okay.
Right.
And it's just like, that's not the typical thing. I mean, most of the victims I'm dealing with, it may be a 23-year-old, U.S. citizen that is ticked, and she's angry, and she doesn't want nothing I can give her. I don't need you, because she's been in a fight or flight mode, so she's cussing me out, the first time we meet. It looks so different than what you think it'll look like, and we have to be willing to go the rounds to peel back the layers and get to the person, and really, really be there for them. So are we winning? Are we losing? I think we're doing way better than we were.
Yeah.
I think the good news is, before 2008, we weren't even using the term human trafficking. So in one sense, yeah, we're making progress, and there's more people jumping into the fight. I do challenge myself and other agencies to do a better job of getting on the same page of music with each other,
Sure.
and make sure we're really being efficient, because the stakes are too high to not do it with excellence.
Yep.
But I do know we have a long way to go. You've seen the end it movement. Put the X on the hand. I mean, I dig it. I love it when people are like, yeah, end it. We're doing it. But we also have to wake up call that just being aware doesn't necessarily result of fixing this.
Sure.
Hurting people. They need new community. First, they need Jesus, and then they need new community.
Yeah.
And we have to be willing to truly, again, love our neighbor as we love ourselves, and be there for people. And it takes a physical action, word and deed. And we all, all of us, the church, we gotta step up.
Yep.
and be there, not only for the trafficked, but for the lonely, for the homeless, for the veteran, for the unpopular, for the annoying, for the needy, whatever it looks like. Are we going to step up and be there and say, you know what, I see you. I sincerely, this isn't me checking a box. I sincerely see you, love you, and want to be there for you. I mean, that's where it gets long term.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, and I think even if we could say we're unsure about whether or not the battle as a whole is being won, we can point to people, and you can point to people's lives, and you can say, I won a battle for that one, and I won a battle for that one, and I won a battle for that, right? So the work that's being done is still meaningful, even if there's more work to be done, even if this ends up being a thing that's, we do for the next 10 decades, this is something that it's important to the people who are rescued. And like you said,
exactly.
It's a good battle no matter what. All right,
Yeah.
I want to have some conversations for fathers here, because, I'm a father of two sons. Both of my boys are about grown. One's 18 now, the other one's 15. And so they're getting older, but I can only imagine that fathers of daughters are listening to this podcast episode and going, where's my daughter right now? Let me text her, tell her I love her, ask her where she knows. But seriously, I want to have a conversation with, especially for fathers of daughters. And then I want to have a conversation for fathers of sons. But what kind of advice would you have for a father of a daughter that to keep her safe, to help her to know, what kind of things she needs to be aware of? Are there programs that she can go to, things she can get educated on? What would you say to a father of a daughter?
I'll say this. So much of the trafficking activities we see are traffickers that take what I call Romeo approach, and they basically approach the girl, the vulnerable individual, as if it's going to be a relationship, and they take care of them, and for a little while there's kind of a honeymoon stage, and then they flip on them.
Yeah.
So so they actually think it's very similar to a domestic violence type relationship in that regard, and they're seeking out vulnerable young ladies to draw out. So in one weird way, this may seem funny, but it's like, date your daughter before they do.
Oh, that's great.
It's like I mean, I just made that up. So that's not. You can use that.
No, we're going to use it. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. But I think you see with fathers that this young lady, she knows she's adored. She knows she's pretty. She knows she's worth it, because her daddy's been telling her that all her life, and he's been doing it in word and in action. And he's truly, it's truly daddy's little girl. And in a good way. The other problem is, we've seen way too many uncles and dads and other mixed situations with relatives, so oftentimes the first sexual abuse was happening in the home or from a friend of the family. So, I mean, lock that junk down.
Exactly.
Like, I mean, be on guard. Don't just leave your daughter with, this dude or that guy. Oh, he's a good guy. You better be sure, So in that sense, be that great protector in the best of your ability. Know where your kids are at, protect them, be very careful on even who they're with. And then, so assuming it's a healthy relationship, obviously just make sure she knows she's loved and she knows she's valued. And I think that's one of the most important things fathers can do is truly be invested and let that little girl know that she is special, she is precious, and she is adored in the eyes of her father.
I think that's awesome.
And then, and for the sons, just letting them, you probably can talk to this a lot more than I can, but the idea of, hold them accountable to be the man you're calling them to be, encourage them, be their best fan, their best encourager, that, what, you are worth it. You are a man. I'm validating you. I see value in you. I'm proud of you. I mean, those things are huge. That he's not seeking to prove himself as a man other places because he's had that validation by his father or father figure. So, I mean, that's, simple stuff that we know, but basically, love on your daughter, make sure they know they're special, and encourage your son in the ways you'd have him go.
Yeah. And there's an intentionality here that you're talking about. These are things that we would hope that our kids would just get. And we got to understand that this is an uphill battle, guys. I mean, that we've got so many forces pushing against the moral and the ethics that we would want our kids to grab a hold of, that we've got to be very intentional about, dating our daughters, raising our sons to be men, those kinds of things, and really instilling in them the values that we want them to get. And it's got to be so intentional that it overwhelms all the kind of outside negative things that they're being pushed towards. And I think that's really key. And especially, I'll speak a little bit for fathers to sons because I have two sons. One of the things that I really want my sons to get is that, one, John Eldredge has this great quote that says, a man's job is to bring strength into a relationship, to offer to a woman, not to get his strength from a woman, right? So I don't want my sons to think that they're getting their joy, their high, their esteem, and that kind of stuff from some kind of relationship. I want them to have that and then be able to offer that and then share it like in a mutual love, in an actual relationship. The other thing I want them to understand is the difference between real true relationships, real true sex, and this phony stuff that is so easy and that kids get drug into. And it is not the same. It is not even a healthy substitute. Not only that, but it's dangerous. It ruins their mind, wrecks their testosterone, wrecks their image of women and their image of themselves, image of God. And I really want them to grab a hold of that and just understand just how cheap and useless and worthless, pornography is. And it's not something that they ever want to deal with. And unfortunately, those it's still, I mean, even in my home, it's still an issue that we have to constantly be on guard about because it's just so pervasive. And obviously, when I was a kid, I didn't really understand this like I do now as an adult. But and I did. I jumped at pornography whenever I could, but it wasn't as available as it is now either. So you're absolutely right. I mean, I think especially the part about fathers dating your daughters, be intentional, take them out, let them know that you love them and that they don't need to get, any kind of, they don't need a boyfriend out there telling them that they're worthy because they've got, they know their father and hopefully they know their father in heaven loves them as well.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's good. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And even on that with the men, something that I see a lot too. I love just the theme of being a protector for men, and I think that's something that's undersold and oftentimes not sold young enough. Yep. I remember even when I was 3 years old, my dad would leave for business. He's like, "All right, you're the man of the house," and I took that job seriously, even at 3 and 4. I remember even asking him one time when I was 3 or 4. He said, "You think I could take like a 20-year-old, like physically?" I mean, I was asking like logistically, I'm plotting this out, like how I can take this dude down. He's like, "Maybe, yeah, sure." Even that, he's encouraging me, like, "Yeah, you might be able to. I don't know." And but just this idea that the responsibility is on you.
Yep.
We all have questions for, how do we know we've become a man or whatever. And for me, I think personally, it's a part of my story. I had this realization in my early teens, 12, 14, something like that, where I then began to realize that at my age and where I was, just where the Lord had brought me, as a person, that if something went down, if some crisis or threat approached the place I was at, whether that was a church event or at home or whatever, that I'm actually now up to bat. Not to supersede my dad. If he's available, I'll back him up. But in terms of the community and my surrounding people that are here, I now have a responsibility to these people to be a protector and a caregiver. I think we have way too many men going into their 20s and 30s that are running from the fight, are running from the call to protect. Because they're self-interest. I think you start becoming a man when you put yourself at that towards the bottom end of the list of who comes first. And you're putting other people first. That's real manhood, in my opinion, and really encouraging that even with your sons and with young boys you can pour into, just saying, hey, you know what? There's a responsibility here, and that can be empowering. That alone it's truthful. And if a man's looking for purpose, he wants to be a man. Well, buddy, this is part of it. It's not easy, and you may get hurt. But there's a reason when a ship is sinking, we say women and children first. And just stepping up to say, you're not a boy anymore. You're growing into manhood, and just all the responsibility and protective instincts that should come with that. It's a big deal.
Absolutely agree. And I think that's a great note to wrap up on. I did want to ask this one question, and we're going to have links and everything out here. Guys, also, if you want to support this, I know you do, you can head over to wolfandiron.com/justice. And we'll have the notes for this podcast. The podcast will actually be out there if you want to share it with other people, and I certainly encourage you to do that, but also links to Justice Ministries, how to support them. But let us know, Mark, how can we support what you guys are doing specifically? And maybe there's a way even that we would, if somebody wanted to support the local efforts in their own town that they're in, they could do that as well. But how would we support you guys specifically?
Sure. Yeah, really what we're pushing for in terms of financial support, I'm really looking to grow our monthly financial supporters. We've been operating on, $200,000 or less, every year. And that's staff, that's operations, that's client care, that's everything. And really we need to be on our way towards $1 million a year. I mean, that may seem ambitious, but it's really not with the volume that we're seeing. And to do that, the point of that financial increase is so I can hire more victim advocates and case managers and people to be on call so that we can serve more people and expand. We're getting all the calls we can handle, and there are other needs that we could probably try to reach out to if we had the support. So one-time gifts are great, but we really are looking for people to commit and sign up to be monthly contributors. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to download our smartphone app. You just search Justice Ministries in the App Store, and you can sign up there. You can also sign up on our website, justiceministries.org, and donate through that. Or, if you want to send checks the old-fashioned way, I love those too. But I've been telling people I'd rather someone give $5 a month for the next multiple years than $250 today.
Sure.
I really would. Yeah. And just helping people see that we are, in a sense, building that army. And this is a way to kind of say, I'm locked in. I'm going to be with this for a while. I'm not trying to break anybody's bank, but just work us into your budget, whether you got a business or with your own personal finances, whatever that amount could be. Seek the Lord in that. But we have recurring expenses, and we have new clients, but oftentimes those clients stay with us for years, and those expenses don't go away. And when we're looking to not only serve who we're serving, but serve many more. And the best way to do that is to grow a budget so we can do it well.
That's awesome.
The financially is big. The other thing we're working on right now is we're launching a few different projects, one of which is we're building some tiny homes to be used as basically mobile safe houses. And so any woodworker, craftsman type guys out there, I know you do some woodworking on your own, but if anyone wants to reach out to me and their Bible study group or their small group say, hey, you know what, we want to tackle a safe house, we can definitely talk. We have some dimensions on our best idea to do it, but I'm up for creative ideas too. So that's a tangible project, and the others are more financial.
No, it's great. I think it's great. The safe house is a really great way for guys to get involved in a practical way. We love to put our hands on something, right?
Sure.
And pounding some nails is a good way to get your aggression out over this issue. So I'll send some guys your way on that. I'll tell you also, one of the things we're doing for one of the veterans organizations locally here called the Independence Fund is we've actually, through Rustic in Maine, so for you guys who don't know, I have another business called Rustic in Maine where we create these wedding rings. They're really cool. And they're all made from historic woods. There's always a story behind the ring that we create. And we did something for the Independence Fund that's going to honor our veterans. And we basically are taking a percentage of the proceeds from that ring sale, and we're just giving that money straight to those guys. We're going to do the same thing for you guys as well. And
Awesome.
I have no idea what that dollar amount's going to be, but this will be actually one of the few rings that we have that's geared towards the ladies in terms of style and stuff like that. I do know the elements of the ring are going to contain some Bethlehem olive wood. So actually from Israel, we've got some Purple Heart there, and I think some silver as well, or maybe gold. But either way, I'll get you. Once we have that put together and prettied up, I'll let you know about it, and we can share it on both our ends. But it's just a good way to support you guys, and kind of like you mentioned earlier. You know, you talked about budgeting these things. One of the things that I wanted to do when I started Rustic in Maine and even Wolf and Iron was think about how can I make this more than just about making a buck and just helping out my family and my friends and that kind of stuff. I really want to make a difference. And from the very get-go, we said we want to start, giving at least 10% away, but we also want to find ways to get other people excited about missions that are so critical, and to really be able to, have a practical way to give and also spread the word. And so we're kind of doing that way, a little bit of advertisement before it actually comes out. But you guys that are listening to this, be on the lookout. I'll post that on Wolf and Iron as well as Rustic in Maine once the ring design is done, and you guys can check it out and see if it's a good fit for something to buy. But we love to support you guys.
Awesome, yeah.
We love to support you guys and want to see you guys continue and really help you to reach that $1 million a year, which I'm sure you guys need to be at. I know you guys would spend that money rescuing lives, so that's really the best use that I can think of.
Right on. And put me down for a few of those Bethlehem rings, man. That sounds pretty awesome.
Okay.
You got a few orders from just this guy. That's
awesome.
Really cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
Will do. Well, Mark, this has been a fantastic conversation. I know it's going to open up some, the eyes of the guys who are listening to this and thinking, man, that's right, this is happening all around me. I need to be a part of this thing, and I need to make some changes here. And so I really appreciate you taking the time. This was sort of last minute, but I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. And look, man, we'll be praying for you. We want the best from you guys, and just keep me posted on how things are going and what kind of needs you have, and I'll do my best to share it with the guys as well.
That's right on. Well, I really appreciate it, and look forward to continuing the conversation in the months and years ahead. So I appreciate you guys.
Well, there you have it, men. I'd love to know what you thought about the episode. Feel free to reach out to me on any of my social media networks. And look, if you got something out of this, make sure another guy does too. Share the episode and make sure it gets in front of the guys that need to hear it the most. Until next time, keep your powder dry, and may a fair wind be always in your sails.